Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. This is Nancy Narden. I'm with Smart Selling Tools, and I have Trey Gibson on with me as well from Spotio. Say hello, Trey.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
I'm just going to mention a couple things up front. We're going to try to keep this to a snappy 30 minutes. We'll allow for some Q&A as well in case some of you have questions, and maybe try to keep this as interactive as possible. I also wanted to let you know that we are recording this, so you will receive a link to the recording in case you want to watch it later or share it with some of your colleagues. And then we also are going to be sharing with you the State of Field Sales survey report that Spotio conducted, so that you'll get some really good, juicy details from that research. They do that every year. Of course, we'll be talking about that a little bit today as well. So I just thought I would mention that Trey and I met about a year ago or so when he briefed me on Spotio. And I realized, we were talking a lot about the marketplace and the need for more focus on field sales, right? We know there's a lot of focus on inside sales right now. And one of the things I realized is I had never done a webinar on the field sales topic, which is kind of interesting because that is my background. It's also Trey's background. So before we jump into it, I'm going to just give you a brief, some info on who I am, so you know why I'm even here talking about this. But I've spent the last 30 years in sales myself, started in Silicon Valley, at a small startup company across from another startup called Sun. My startup company was called Grid, and it was the very first laptop computer. So that's a picture of it you're looking at right now. I still have it, actually. Later, they came out with one of the first tablet type devices. And the reason I'm telling you this is because I think it was the laptop that really gave birth to sales apps, if you think about it, right? Because who would need a laptop? This was at a time when people were still deciding who deserves a regular PC on their desk, if you can believe that. Not everyone felt that they were warned everyone needed a PC. So now we're at the point where people are asking themselves, do all of our sales teams need tablets? Or are laptops good enough? So it was same kind of idea way back then. But we had to figure out how to sell these laptops, and that means we needed apps, right? We were still lugging around real slides because there was no PowerPoint and there was no CRM. So after lots of years in technology sales and also selling for analyst companies, I decided to found Smart Selling Tools about 10 years ago. And the purpose is really to keep track of what I saw, just the beginnings of sales technology, a new software landscape, right? And even today, we still kind of think of it as just CRM. But as you can see behind me, there are about 600 different sales tech solutions. So we've gone far beyond CRM at this point. We're going to talk about the ramifications of that and what that means for field sellers. But Trey, let me kick it off to you and let you tell your story about your background and also why you started Spotio.
Absolutely. So my background right out of college got into construction sales. So I was pounding the pavement just like many of y'all on the webinar. So I started out back in the day. I had what's called a MapSco, which was a map, a GPS, and a phone and some Post-it notes, and that's what we did, driving around town from stop to stop. And then I ended up growing that and had a pretty large field sales team. And so went from having doing it myself to managing a team, and then out of my trials and tribulations of doing that came the idea for Spotio, and that's what I do now. So I've ran the gamut. I've pounded the pavement, I've managed those that pound the pavement, and now at Spotio we have an inside sales team. So I've seen the complete dichotomy of the tools available from field sales management, and now having an inside team, like the abundance of options we have and we provide to our team, and really how unfair it is for field sales teams. And so that's our goal at Spotio, is to kind of balance the scale there.
Mm-hmm. And when you were selling out in the field, Trey, do you remember the days of having boxes of literature in your trunk that you'd open up and pull out what you thought you might need
Absolutely,
in
just
your
toting it
meeting?
around, and yeah, I had
Yeah.
these crates, and there would be two or three of them, and they'd have marketing material and some file folders, and I joke that I can drive, talk on the phone while driving, while
Oh no.
holding a map, while looking through my folder at different proposals, and so multitasking was just something you had to do. So yeah, I remember it well.
Yes. And I know a lot of people that are still in field sales, and I know that that's still the scenario. But I have to say, you don't have to do it that way anymore.
Right.
There's a new advanced way. And because what you just described is what I did when I was field selling also. And so this has been going on for a long time, a long time, and it's time it ends. So part of our webinar is about, are you leaving your field sales team in the technological dust? And the question begs itself, compared to who? And I think it's compared to SDRs, because, and AEs, right? Those are the other types of reps. And what we're seeing is that, there's been this um, emphasis now on SDRs as a career, and we're seeing that maybe there doesn't need to be as much focus on field sales, or rather that there should be more focus on inside sales. It shouldn't just be viewed as a uh, entry level position. Right? There's a whole art to it. So it's becoming more and more important. And we're seeing results of that. One result is that the on-target earnings are rising for SDRs. Their average on-target earnings are rising by 5.5% over the past year. So that's nice and promising for them. The other thing is that their seniority is growing, and this is fascinating because it used to be just an entry-level job, kind of a springboard into real sales. But now the SDR tenure is increasing by 15% to an average of over 3 years. I would not have guessed that,
Right.
but that is the case. And part of it is because, um, they're experiencing a lot of glory, and they're feeling like this is a great time to be in inside sales. It's all sunshine and rainbows and lollipops. Uh, and the question is, why is that? So I mentioned earlier, there's 600 sales technologies. If we dive into what those technologies are aimed at, then you're going to start to get a glimmer as to why they are doing so well. So of those 600 technologies, I circle, the three major categories of what inside sellers are being given in terms of technology. There's lots of sales prospecting engagement tools. There are trigger event tools which tell them who they should be calling and when, and help to prioritize lead lists for them. There's dialers. Of course, some of these other tools that aren't circled, that are more general use, can also be used by inside sales. So they are getting the lion's share, I would say, right now of the investment. And let me just point out too that there's been hundreds of millions of dollars invested in the last several years in these types of technologies. So there's a lot riding on it. And my question is, when are we going to start to see that on the field sales side? We're seeing a little bit of that now, which I'll take you through. But the other piece of it is AEs. Now, these are all tools aimed specifically at AEs. Right? And some of them might be in the field, but these are not field solutions. They are not necessarily designed to be mobile, although some of them are. So with the prior slide and this, you can see that it makes up a good portion of all of these technologies. Now, let's look at the field sales technologies. It's just a very small piece of this overall landscape. And some of these are very specialized, that even if you have field reps, they don't really pertain to you because, for instance, you don't do what's called retail detailing, that sort of thing, and other very specific functionality that might be needed for field sellers. So what does all this mean? It means that something's missing for field sellers. What is it? Trey and I were talking, and we realized that there's kind of three different types of field sales organizations. Ones that may not have CRM at all. Are you just using office productivity tools to get your job done, a schedule, maybe a spreadsheet, things like that? There are those that have a CRM, but maybe the reps just aren't using it very well, and there's good reason for that. Think about it, CRM came out 30 some odd years ago. Now, certainly it's changed, but the fundamental purpose of it is still to add data, to log information. And it usually requires that you lift up the laptop lid, that you know, log in, that you know, find the right record and update it. It's not really designed for mobile field sellers. And then there's the third category, which is field sales solutions specifically. Now, they can act as a CRM. So if you don't have a CRM, this field sales solution can act as a CRM. But again, keep in mind it's very mobile and has other functionality as well. Or if you have a CRM tool, it can act as the main interface for that field seller. And that means that they don't have to deal with all the cumbersome data entry that a CRM presents. At the same time, all the data they're collecting can feed into your main CRM system. And in my view, that is really the best scenario. So I'm going to turn it over to Trey to talk about some of the things that Trey, that you've seen in this latest report. And I also think it would be important to kind of compare a standard CRM with other functionality that's missing, because after all, that's what qualifies people as being left in the dust.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I'll dive right in, give a little background on this report that we put out each year. This is done by an independent third party. We interview, or they interview, hundreds of field sales reps and field sales leaders just to find out what's going on, the state of field sales. Free report. You'll be emailed this as an attendee, and it's available on our website. But we ask things like, what are the biggest challenges you're experiencing to do your job? Where are you spending your time? What's preventing you from hitting your numbers? Just things like that for not only you, their colleague, to know what's going on, but also us internally. Are our innovation paths for our product going to be helping solve big problems? We want to know that. And so I'll get into some of the results that we got from that. On the next slide here, we talk about the big issues, top 3 challenges of field sales reps. I'll speak to these a little bit. So number 1, access to targeted leads. Of course, as a salesperson, we all want someone to call on. Inside sales, we have all sorts of tools. Outside sales, they're reported using things like Google Maps, or different very basic contact info, or just randomly stopping into businesses. Number 2, to me, is probably the most important. That's organization to their day. Here at Spotio now, we have, of course, Salesforce, and we bolt on outreach to that. So when my reps come in the morning, they have a nice, beautiful list of all the things they need to, emails to send, calls to make, so on and so forth, and it's pretty good. Outside sales, we find that they're giving inside sales CRMs, or even worse, pen and paper, like I used to do back in the early 2000s. A great story here that I want to share is, this is a couple weeks ago. We're a Bank of America customer, and I got contacted by the local field sales rep here, and she said, can I come by and show you some of the new products we have out? And I said, sure, why not? They came in, and she brought another field sales rep with her from for ADP, and they were sitting and talking to me, giving me their pitch. And at the end, I said, hey, y'all mind if I ask you a couple questions? And she said, sure. I said, okay, so when you leave today, I said, first, what CRM do you use? They said Salesforce. I said, when you leave this meeting today, are you going to go and log the notes from our time together? I figured, of course. And she said, yeah, I will. This is a good meeting. We're moving forward with one of the products, so I'll log that in. I said, okay, let's say you go across the hall to our neighbor and you just drop a business card off, introduce yourself. Maybe it turns into something years from now. I said, would you log that into Salesforce? She said, I would. I said, okay, let's say you're sitting at home or at Starbucks or whatever, and you send out an email or make a phone call to a potential prospect. Would you log that into Salesforce? She said, I would, manually. And at this point, I'm thinking, this sounds like a lot of data entry. I said, okay, magic question. How much time do you spend each week logging information into your CRM? This was the highest number I've ever heard. I've asked this question over the years and gotten a varying response, but it was 25 to 30 hours per week, which I thought was quite a bit. Let's say you cut it in half, and it's 10 to 15 hours a week. It's still an incredible amount of time to be doing data entry. And our report backs that up, because the report shows that field sales reps are spending, on average, 2/3 of their time on non-selling activities. And so that's why organization of the day is so important.
Hey, Trey, it reminds me of the joke about, you know, uh, startup organizations where they say, hey, we only want you to work half days and we don't care which 12 hours.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. We only want you to spend half your day, logging
Logic of
information,
it.
and
Yeah.
we don't care which 12 hours it is.
That's
I'm
right.
curious, did those reps have any tablet kind of device with them that they were using?
I'm sure they had laptops. I don't know about a tablet. I
But they
don't.
weren't you couldn't see them like using a tablet to show you information or anything like that
I know. I think
necessarily.
no, I don't remember.
Yeah. So, and that's not surprising because a lot of times it takes so long because they have to wait till they get back to their car, so they can flip up their laptop and boot it up and all of that craziness. Or they do what a lot of reps do, which is they wait until the end of the week and then they go back through their schedule to see what happened and they try to remember and enter in all the dates. So it's
Yeah.
just a lot of time, as well as probably not capturing the right amount of information. And picture if you have you just got your cell phone and you just, going through a form and click, click, click and filling out a nice, quick, easy call disposition note that then just gets fed right into
Yeah.
CRM.
Exactly. Yep. And the third was manager enablement and coaching. So, as an inside team, we have all sorts of call recordings tools where our leadership can coach and help reps that are ramping training or just wanting to improve, all right there. Whereas in field sales, like what I used to do with my team is you ride along with them. So you go and you can only, how scalable is that? I can only ride along with so many people. Or the worst is the spot check calls. How many of y'all out there have had something like this? So your manager calls you or you've called your team and said, hey, how's it going out there today? Oh, pretty good. Okay, great. So you made a sale? Oh, no, you didn't. All right, but made some good contacts though, right? So, in a week or two, we should see some things coming through. Great. Okay, that sounds good. All right, well, hey, keep up with it. Like that's a common phone call between rep and manager, and it's completely non-valuable, provides no value for either party. But without context or access to information on the manager side or the rep, you can't have a fruitful conversation. So those are
Mhm.
the top rep challenges that we got from our field sales report.
Can
And
I just summarize those again? Because I
sure.
think it's really important to keep these in mind. This 1, 2, 3 in the left-hand column, access to targeted leads. The last thing you want your field reps doing is flipping through and figuring out, well, I got an extra hour. Who should I go and see now? Or this particular appointment canceled. So how am I going to fill my time? Not really remembering or understanding where all of your accounts are across the area that you're visiting that day. And then again, the organizational aspect of it, just poor productivity, and then visibility in terms of the management side.
So on the sales leaders, some of the challenges they've mentioned, rep training and onboarding. We know how tough that is if they're not there right in the office. So how do you do that at a scalable in a scalable way? Visibility direct to rep activity. We touched on that on the previous slide a little bit. However, I'll dive in a little bit further here because what we hear from sales leaders is that by the time they get access to information, it's very far down in the sales funnel. We all know as salespeople that whatever is getting ready to close started from an activity sometime in the past. And sales leaders want visibility into those top of funnel activities to understand if the team is going to be able to hit their goals a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now. A good example is one of our customers that they came to us and said, we know that for our sales team on average to hit their quota, they need 1.5 appointments set per day. On average, that's what we need. And the only time we get that information is when the appointment's set, they log it into their CRM. But we have no idea what goes on before that. who should they visit, how often should they visit them, um, when are they going to visit, all of these different attributes that lead up to a successful sales call. So when they would bring in new reps, it was kind of just a, hey, go out there and have at it. And so we worked with them to be able to use data to create a repeatable process to say, okay, here's who I want you to go visit and when, and here's what you say, and here's how many times you do that. And therefore we know that we have a higher chance of getting that 1.5 appointments per day. And then number three, sales pipeline metrics. You know, again, if the opportunities are only being entered right before they close, then the information is kind of untimely. It's too late at that point. And like Nancy mentioned, if they're logging information in the nights, weekends, whenever they get the chance, it's also going to be inaccurate. Just because you can't remember when you talk to 5 to 10 people a day, by the end of the week, there's no way you're going to remember everybody. It's just going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So what can you do about it, right? So first and foremost, set your reps up for success. So give them the tools they need, and the tools they need aren't just an inside sales CRM. You need to be able to use it out in the field and have context around where you're at and what you need to do. Gather field-specific data points. That's what we mentioned on top of funnel type behavior activity. So visits, number of calls, emails, things of that nature. Don't wait until it's all the way down getting ready to close before you get that information. And get strategic. So territory management, you know, we've found some really amazing things about territory management. And my favorite is that typically reps are going to go to a prospect one time and then move on. Whereas our data shows that you have to visit and revisit 4 to 5 times. So if I'm selling to restaurants, I have a POS system, I'm selling to restaurants, let's say, and I go and I stop by each one time. That's not as effective as going back and back and back. The story I have here is we have a UPS sales guy that comes by our office, and he comes by once a year. Once a year in March, he'll come by and he'll say, hey, how are y'all doing? Do you want to switch to UPS? And we say, no, we don't. And we are fine with FedEx. And he comes by. And I stopped him. I said, hey, why are you only come by once a year? And he said, well, this is my building. I hit this building, your building, this time each year, and then I'll go next door. And I said, well, you know, we're a FedEx user, but you've never even asked me how much we spend with FedEx. It's $30 a month. I send like 3 things. So why would you even stop by me? Log that information, know who your highest value prospects are, and invest time with them. And I think I blew his mind. And he's like, you know, we have 3,000 reps nationwide. This would be very effective. And I was like, man, there's a huge opportunity for getting strategic on spending time with your most valuable prospects.
Yeah.
It's
That's a great story. And the fact that it's about UPS kind of surprises me, because one of my favorite stories to tell, and I won't go into all the details, but it's the left-hand turn thing.
Yeah.
Basically, that they eliminated left-hand turns in the route because they realized that across all of those drivers, it added up into significant fuel savings along with other benefits.
Yeah.
And so for them to be wasting that time, essentially they're doing left-hand turns in their call visits, which makes no sense because they don't have the visibility, which is all a factor of just using traditional software and hardware instead of mobile field focused software and hardware.
They don't have, the leadership team has no visibility to that, so they don't know that this is what's going on. Because with the right hand turn, left hand turn, I mean, they have a, you know, they can see where the routes, they create the routes for the truck, so they have visibility into that. Without the data, you can't make these strategic choices and help coach your team in these strategic ways.
So I was just going to, I mean, you mentioned a couple of these, I think, on the last slide. So let's dive into this briefly here. And then I also just want to, remind people, if they do want to jump in with questions, that just to hit the Q&A button, and we'll try to get to those.
So this is just around how a map-based product can help, like you mentioned, find other high-value prospects around you versus bouncing around town. You end your appointment at 1 p.m. Don't drive 45 minutes away to your next appointment when there's another one that could be had right across the street. You know, that's the point of using the geo-based map to help remain productive.
And not as a slight to Salesforce as a CRM, but it's just more about a list view. I mean, this is, I guess we're used to list views with spreadsheets and things like that, but look at that compared to on the left, where you can quickly understand more about that company, see where they're located, what you did last, without having to keep going down from one screen to another, one record to another.
Yeah, and I love we use Salesforce internally. I'm a huge fan of it, and
Yeah.
a majority of our customers have a CRM as well. So we completely encourage that too. It's just about, like, as an inside sales team now, we provide our team with the tools they need to do their job. What we've seen is field sales organizations have not. They're a little late to the party on that, and so we're hoping that they catch up. Same thing with getting
Mhm.
strategic with your data, and then, no surprise there. Get the data and use it to your advantage, and ensure they're spending their time on the right things. Don't bounce around town spending hours driving to different appointments when you could do it all. Plan it out, be strategic, and save a ton of time.
Mhm. Well, let's talk about some things. Obviously, you have Spotio. It's a great app for field sellers, but we did promise to talk about some free, inexpensive, or even free tools that people can use. So let's go through some
Yeah.
of these examples.
Yeah, so I always like giving out free examples because not everybody has the opportunity to invest in paid solutions. So there are some free tools out there. They'll just take a little bit longer sometimes because it's not all interconnected. But for finding leads, Google Maps Yellow Pages also has an app. We have customers that also use, like, Yelp if you're business, or White Pages if you're more B2C. They can provide homeowner names and things like that. So you can find the contact information of the people that you're going to sell to in those. Customer mapping, so to see your customers on a map, the free version, Batch Geo, you can upload a CSV. Same with Mapline. They limit it to 500 records, but if you can get your customers in a CSV, you can upload them there. And then appointment routing.
Good tip.
Spotio, of course, we have that, but also Google Maps, they have a 5-stop limit though. But if you only have 5 appointments for today, you can load them in and it'll tell you the best order and directions you need to go to make the most use of your time.
Mhm.
And then also, for outside sales solution, if you have invested in a CRM, you can use Google Maps, like I mentioned, to get your customers onto that map. Um, if you don't have a CRM, you could use HubSpot. They have a free CRM. We have some of our customers that use them. And so there's a couple free and paid ways that you could either bolt on a mapping solution to your CRM, or find one that's free.
Mhm. Good. All right. Well, I think we did come right in at about 30 minutes. So let's see if anybody has some questions. In the meantime, I will just say that we started off by talking about, uh, how are you leaving your field sellers in the dust, and how to know and what to do about it. I think the answer to how to know is, if you are only giving them, AE inside sales types of tools, then you probably are living or are leaving them in the dust. And what to do about it, I think there's some good suggestions that Trey mentioned in terms of some free tools. I love the idea of uploading a CSV file and getting them mapped out into the Google Maps. And then, obviously there's Spotio and some solutions that work with your CRM or can work as a CRM as well. So I do have a question. How do you envision a tech stack for companies that have both an inside sales team and an outside sales team?
Yeah, good question. That is very common. Any sizable company will probably have both. What we've seen that's most common is there will be some sort of database of record, and that's typically the CRM, whether it be Salesforce, Dynamics, NetSuite. And so that's where the hub of all the information, and then different tools bolt on to that. And so Spotio can bolt on to those, and then you might have other different tools. I think here at Spotio for our inside sales team, is we have 8 or 9 different tools that they use, from how to generate a proposal to how to
Mhm.
calls, email tracking, uh, customer support tickets, all of these things, but it all syncs right back into our Salesforce. And we're starting to see field sales organizations adapt that. And it's just important to have that tech stack and get tools that can be integrated. Integrations remove frustration for the sales team because they don't want to do double entry. So
Yeah.
that's also, I believe, the future of software and technology are tools that do certain things very, very well, and they bolt on and integrate together to pass data back and forth. We're seeing that as more and more popular. Doing one tool doing everything that you need is just, those are the old school ERPs, and they're $1 million, $2 million and take 3 years to implement. It's just, nobody has time for that.
So true. Yeah. And there's a lot of talk about, a move toward a platform, which means lots of capabilities and functionality in one solution rather than point solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And there's certainly an argument for that to a degree, but like you said, they take a lot longer to implement. Perhaps the risk is even higher because if you make the wrong choice or you're not getting the adoption you need on a point solution, okay, it hurts, but you get a different point solution. You're not having to just waste $4 million on a platform that just didn't turn out for you. So that's one thing to consider. I do like the idea of having, but the integration is the key, like you mentioned. And that comes down to oftentimes inside sellers are setting up appointments for outside sales
Mm-hmm.
teams. And so that kind of integration also has to be taken into account.
Right.
We got another question. How often are field reps cold calling businesses? I have heard that inside sales teams can make up to 100, 200 calls a day. That's a really good point. So inside sales is very volume based because you're just picking up a phone. And you can even press a button to leave a voicemail while you get on to the next one. So it's very high velocity, high volume oriented. Trey,
Yeah.
what would you say to that?
So the research, I don't remember the stats off the top of my head, but it was something around the fact that you're correct. Inside sales teams I can do more activity, but outside sales teams are more effective, meaning I might only be able to make 15 calls a day or visits, but when I'm getting in front of someone, I'm much more effective at converting that over to a customer down the line because it's a personal touch. So I don't really remember the specifics on that. I'll have to dig that up. But field sales reps, it depends on the industry. We have some B2C customers that knock on 100 doors a day, and that's what they do day in and day out. We have others that visit 3 to 5 businesses a day, and that's what they do. And so it really just depends on the type of industry they're in. If you're in super enterprise field sales, like we talked to this one company that sold nuclear power plant equipment, he might call like one person a month. I don't know. I mean, how many of
Right.
them are there out there that do that? So,
Right.
yeah, I really think and this is when it comes back to, there's this whole argument in inside sales on, do you force your team to make phone calls? You have to call 100 people a day. Go call it. Or are you okay if one of them calls 15 people a day, but he still sets the 3 appointments, or she still
Mm-hmm.
closes 1 deal a day? Do you care if they call 100? Or are you really after the results? So you need to
Mm-hmm.
start with the results and then work your way back to the behaviors.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I'll just add to that when you're thinking about the technology that you might want to consider for your field reps, think about your sales processes and what you expect from them. What does good look like? That's one of my favorite questions. What do you need them to accomplish? What do you need so that you know whether they accomplished it? What kinds of measurements and metrics do you need to be able to put into place? And what's getting in the way of your field rep making more stops or having those stops be more effective? Those are the kinds of questions you really want to think through before you start looking at technology, because you might realize, well, my rep's sitting in the car a good part of the time trying to figure out who they should go see next. That's one issue. Or my rep calls a lot, and sets up appointments for the entire week. So that's a different kind of approach.
Mm-hmm.
So really lay out your processes and what you want to accomplish, and then look for the software and the tools that can help you with that.
A good story is this was recent. We had our lead developer and our mobile developer go right along with a new customer, and they noticed that this gentleman was bouncing around town. We're in Dallas, and so was driving. In Dallas, everything's far. You can't go anywhere in less than 30 minutes, and so they were bouncing around, going to these different appointments, and all over town. they said they visited like 3 or 4 people, and it took the majority of the day. And they asked him, they said, well, why aren't you using our routing feature? Like, why don't you type in these appointments and it'll tell you which order you need to go? And he
Right.
hadn't been trained on that yet, so he didn't even know about it.
Oh,
But think about it, like he could have saved an hour or two out of his day just by doing a little planning ahead of
uh-huh.
time. And
Yeah.
so it's just things like that, that's called best practices. And for field sales organizations, you can create scalable training processes around best practices when you have the tools available for them to use.
Hmm. And when you save a rep that hour, it could mean one of two things. It could mean, well, now that rep can go knocking on more doors, or it could mean now that rep can spend more quality time, perhaps thinking through what they, doing some research on that prospect they're about to call on. Like maybe your UPS driver would have realized somehow that, oh, I already talked to them and they only spend $30 a month, so I'm not going to go and see them.
Hmm.
So you're freeing up time that rep can put to good use one way or or another, either in more efficiency, more productivity, or higher, better effectiveness.
Absolutely.
Well, we are out of time. We actually went a little bit above our 30 minutes. Trey, thank you. This has been interesting. I hope everybody on the call found it helpful, found a few ideas that you can put into action. We will be sending out, as I said, a link to the recording as well as a free copy of the survey report. So look for that in your email. And if you don't see it by tomorrow morning, check your junk mail. That way you'll be sure to see it one way or another. Uh, Thanks again, Trey.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nancy. Enjoyed it.
All right. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.